So I was doing a code review with one of my colleagues earlier, and he pointed out this method, my user repository, the user has role method. Right now I'm having to use a repository method to ask whether or not a user has a given role, and it's less than ideal. Really, you should be able to ask the user itself. The user entity should know whether or not it has this role. The reason that I didn't do it that way at the time was because in my user entity, I'm leveraging this method called contains. That's a method of an array collection. And it needs to be, it'll check whether the object reference actually exists. And so the only way I could do that was to go through the repository and get the role reference so that the entity manager could return the exact object for the role. But there's a better way to do this, and so we're going to try to do that now. So my has role method, I should be able to leverage criteria, create, and where expression equals ID role get ID. So this is analogous to what I would use in a entity manager query, basically. So and then I could just return this roles, or hold on. So return this roles matching role count greater than 0. Sorry, matching of the criteria has role criteria. Okay. So this does look like more code, but we're going to be able to get rid of some methods. So let's verify that the test still pass. Okay, that's good. So now let's go to the user repository, and I'm going to straight up get rid of this user has role method. Over here, when I call it up here, I'm just going to say if user has role of the role. That's it. So this becomes shorter, so that's nice. So what if I want to see where all of that method was invoked? Can just run my test, and they're going to blow up wherever they were invoked. So here you go. Now I can just go here. Instead of user has role, I can just say retrieve user has role of role. Okay. So what's that? Okay, that's good. All right, let me just run them again. So here's another place. So this is going to be retrieve user has role app role driver. Can get rid of all that. Okay, and then the passenger here. Okay. So this should be good. Run the test again. And then so here in the service method, now instead of calling my repository, I don't need to call the repository anymore. I can just go return user has role of app role driver. There you go. I'm deleting code. So good. And then here I'm going to return user has role of app role passenger. Okay. There you go. Now all my tests pass. So I have successfully refactored my code. Yep. So I'm good. I'll move on to the next step now. Okay. So now in our system, we have the ability to create users, assign roles to users, to create locations. And with this, we have the ability to create a ride with a passenger and a departure, and then the ability to later on assign a driver and assign a destination. Now that we have a ride, we want to be able to transition a ride through different lifecycle events. Call those a ride event. So I'm going to create a ride event repository such that a new ride event needs to have a type. So it could be requested, accepted, or all of those. We're going to give it a ride, right? It's going to point to a given ride. It's a ride event for a given ride. And then an actor. For example, it is the passenger who is requested the ride. It could be the driver who is accepting the ride. It's probably going to be the driver who marks the ride as in progress. It could be the driver who marks the ride as completed, etc. So let's dive into all this. All right, so app bundle in my test, I'm going to create new class ride event repository test. Okay. It's going to extend app test case. So the first thing I want to do is test mark ride as requested by passenger. Okay, so we want to create a new ride event, which is a concept we got to come up with. And it's going to need a ride. It's going to need an actor. and a type. So the ride could be so let's look at my ride repository test. See if there's anything that can help me here. Yeah, I have a get save ride method here that could be useful to me. I'm realizing that get save ride method did not technically save the ride, which is not great. So I'm gonna move this here. Yeah. Okay, that's better. Let me make sure that all my tests pass first. Okay, so with a saved ride, I get a ride that has a passenger and a departure. That's pretty good. So let me make this method protected so I can reuse it from the base class app test case. Do some importing. It does need that ride repository, which technically I could bootstrap with these other guys here. Okay. So I'll make it protected. And move it into my app test case. Okay. Let me make sure the test still pass. Okay. So now in theory I could say ride equals this get saved ride. So now I end up with a ride that's saved into my data layer. So for an actor, really in this case, the actor could be straight up the ride's passenger that I already have there. Because technically the ride is going to be requested by the passenger. So the actor for this event is going to be the ride's passenger. Okay, so I'm going to go ride get passenger. And then type equals new ride event type requested. Okay, well, then we'll want to say that this RideEvent repository save my RideEvent. For now, we're just going to test that it actually got saved to the repository. So I should be able to say assert greater than, come on, self 0 RideEvent get ID. So there's a lot going on here. First, as a quick win, let me add this get passenger method. Okay. Return this passenger. Okay. So, RideEvent type is going to be a new thing. It's going to be a new entity. So go entity. Okay. Yes. Namespace is app bundle entity. It's going to be a private constructor. What am I? Didn't mean to say new. It's RideEvent type requested. Yeah, it's a static method. Let's import the class. I'm going to create the method. I'm going to return a new self of 1 requested. So it's going to be ID. It's going to be the name of the event type. So initialize those fields. Oop, there you go. It's going to be an integer ID. This is going to be a string. All right. Private. Okay. So we're going to add the entity notations in a little bit. So now that we have these building blocks, let's create a new RideEvent entity. Let's put that in our source entity folder. Okay. Let's move it to the right. This is a bundle entity. Simplify QDN, simplify RideEvent type. Okay. I wish the ID would automatically type my arguments. It's just silly. Okay. And while we're here, we're going to initialize those fields. Yep, looks good. All right. Back to the test. Let's import this guy. So obviously the test fails because none of these things really exist. So I don't even have a RideEvent repository. So I'm going to go ahead and create a setup function. It'll be slightly cleaner. So I'm going to add the field. Yeah, that's fine. Good type of RideEvent repository. Oop. Okay. So this class does not yet exist. I'm going to call the parent setup. That's good. And this new RideEvent repository equals new RideEvent repository, to which I'm going to pass the entity manager. Okay. So we're going to create this repository. Let me get that RideEvent getID method set up first. Okay. Return this ID. And let's add the field. Okay. Var int ID. Okay. I'm going to create the repo. This repository. This is app bundle repository. Okay. And let's initialize the field. Okay. All right, so now we've got some basic building blocks. So the save method doesn't exist yet, but as soon as I extend app repository, the method should exist. You know what? I don't even need to have this constructor because the parent does it already. In fact, I don't even need anything. That's right. I can just delete all this. Okay. Import the class. Okay. Now this, at least the building blocks are there, but none of the entities right now are properly hooked up. So my test should still fail pretty miserably. Yes. Okay. So let's get to work. Let's look at our RideEvent. So the ID is going to be an ID. It's going to be an generated value, strategy, identity, and the column is going to be named ID of type integer, nullable is false. Okay, so RideEvent type. This is going to be a many to one. Where else did I do a many to one? It was on my right target entity, and then its join column. So the target entity is RideEvent type. Fetch eager, and the join column, yeah, name and reference column name. Okay, so the name is going to be event type ID, reference column name ID. All right. The actor is also going to be a many-to-one target entity app user fetch eager. That join column is going to be probably user ID. Reference column name equals ID. And then this is a many-to-one target entity ride. Again, fetch eager. No, it's ride ID. Duh. All right. Okay, so that's for the properties. I still need to identify this as an entity. Table name equals RideEvents. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So got that RideEvent. Let's run the test. Right, so RideEvent type needs to be set up. So this is going to be an ID. It's not going to be a generated value, so I'm just going to go straight to column, name equals ID, type equals integer, and nullable equals false. And this is going to be just a column, name equals name, type equals string, nullable equals false. Okay. Oh, right. I still need to annotate it here. So this is going to be an entity, and table name equals RideEvent types. Yeah. All right, so now I should get to a point where it complains that this instance of RideEvent type was not saved in the data store. Yes, a new entity was found that was not configured to cascade. So that's fine, that's expected. So what I can do for now is just say this save type. By doing that, I should be happy now. Yep, the test passes. So now I've shown that I can create a RideEvent and save it. You know what? I'm going to reduce the scope of the state to say test save new RideEvent. Yeah, because that's really all I'm technically testing right now. That's kind of enough. Okay. All right, so now that we can save a ride event, um, we want to be able to retrieve the last ride event for a given ride. Um, test ride is currently requested. So, as I mentioned earlier, um, these ride events are kind of an event sourcing model. Um, the current status of a ride is going to be the last ride event entry, the most recent ride event entry uh, assigned to this given ride. So let's move this into a convenience method called get saved requested ride event. Okay. So a few ways I could handle this, but this ride here to which I associate the ride event, I can move it to a field. Okay. And then this saved ride, I'm going to move it to my setup. Okay. Let me make sure that my tests still pass. All right. So I want to be able to say last event for ride equals this ride event repository get last event for ride, to which I'm going to pass this save ride. Um, then I want to be able to say assert true that this last event for ride is requested. Okay, so let's get to work. I'm going to import it. So if I'm introducing the notion of a last event, then an event should really have a created date. It should have a timestamp. So I'm going to add that right now. It's really this created equals new date time. Oop. I'm going to create the field. Just move it up a little bit. This is going to be a column named created of type date time, and it's not going to be nullable either. Okay, so I basically set that when I construct it. Just set the value here. All right. So back in my repository, this method is going to return a single instance of a ride event. Ride event. Yeah. It's going to return this anti-manager create query. So I'm going to set a parameter of ride, the past ride, and I'm going to set max results to 1, and I'm going to get a single result. So yeah, and my DQL is going to be something like select E from entity RideEvent E, where E dot ride, where the events ride is the pass ride. But then I'm going to order by E dot created descending order. So I wonder if things will blow up. Yeah, it appears to work. I could say assert not null last event for ride. Really it can't be null because if it did not find anything, it would have thrown an exception here. So it actually found it, but you know, that's first assertion I can do. All right. So this test is going to fail right now because I need to create this method. Is requested. So To know the type of a write event, I need to query its type property. So it might look something like return is requested. I'm going to extract this into a constant. So it's like return this ID is the same as self requested ID. That's what it could look like. Yeah. Okay. Now the test passes. I'm going to get rid of this assert not null because again, that can't possibly happen because I'll get exceptions if it does happen. So okay. Okay, so now that we are able to get to test the fact that a ride is currently requested, I want to be able to say that to test a ride is currently accepted. It's going to be the driver who accepts it, but first I want to get, I want to save an event that says it's requested. Um, then I want to create a accepted event equals new write event. Against my saved ride. Now the actor, I'm going to make somebody else because it's going to be a driver technically. So this get saved user with name. By doing this, I have not yet assigned a role to the driver, but the event doesn't really care about that. As long as it's got a user who is the actor, it's happy. So I'm just gonna leave it at that for now. Okay, and then the type is going to be RideEvent type accepted. So it's going to be a new type that we're going to introduce. So before getting too far into this, I'm going to extract this type into a field for convenience. I'm going to call it requested type. Yeah. And I'm going to save it in my setup. So yeah, here I'm going to do something similar. It's going to be this accepted type. I'm going to create a field. Okay. And this accepted type equals RideEvent type accepted. Yeah. Return new self. Self accepted ID. Accepted. Constant 2. All right. And then I'm going to say this save. Nope. This repository save accepted event and last event for so now I'm going to retrieve the last event for the ride. So now I have a saved requested event. I have a saved accepted event, and accepted event being the most recent one should win over requested event. So now I should be able to assert false that last event for ride is requested. This should work. Really. Okay. So let's go back to the RideEvent repository and let's look at our query here because we may have a bug. Okay, now it passes. Yeah, so I had to add order by ID descending on top of order by created descending because when the tests execute concurrently, created could happen in the same second. And yeah, so that fixed the issue. Um, Again, if I remove this, the test will fail. Now, if I was to put a sleep statement here, like 2 seconds, the test would probably pass. Yeah. So if I remove the sleep statement, it's going to fail. But if I put order by e.id descending, then yeah, it works. Now it should work. Yep. So that's good. And then I should be able to assert true that last event for ride is accepted. So I'm gonna add a method, return this type is accepted, and I'm gonna say return this ID equals self accepted ID. Okay. All right. All right. So now that I've done support for requested and accepted, I want to add support for all those other events with as little work as possible. So in progress would be next. Let's say that let me extract that to event type to assert. And let's see if I can extract that into a method and say assert last event is of type. There you go. And then I can just do this now. Can I get rid of this? I'm going to put this one as well in here. Okay. So this gives me a base assertion where I start with a requested event and then I create a new event of type, this type that's passed, and then I save it. Then I retrieve the last event for this ride and I verify that it's no longer requested because again I started as requested and then I added another event after that that's other than requested. So at the very least it should be false. And I return that. So now when I want to test a given type, the method is a lot smaller now. So now if I want to go test ride is currently in progress. I can just do this. In progress type, in progress. I'm going to add the field. Going to move it up here. And then this in progress type equals RideEvent type in progress. This save, this in progress type. Okay, cool. Now I add the method, return new self, in progress ID name, in progress. Right. And then add method, return this type is in progress. Create the method, return this ID equals triple equals self. Derp. Oh, I gotta create the constant here. Wait. Silly me. Okay. 3. Okay. Self in progress ID. Okay. This test should pass. Okay. What do we have next? In progress, canceled. All right. Test ride is currently canceled. Cancel type is canceled. Add the field again. Oop, up here. Cancel type. This cancel type equals RideEvent type. Canceled. This save. This cancel type. Okay. Create it here. Return new self of self cancelled ID cancelled. Add the constant. It's going to be 4. Okay. And then let's create the method here. Return this type is cancelled. Create the method. Return this ID equals self cancelled. Okay. Do my test pass. We're still good. so what's the next thing? Cancelled, completed. And we'll do completed and rejected. We won't do expired for now. Test ride is currently completed. Yeah. Self sort true. Well, okay, what am I doing? Script this. This completed type is completed. Okay, so that should work. All right. And then the last one is rejected. Okay. RideEvent type rejected. This save this rejected type. Okay. Add it here. Return new self. Okay. So yeah, that's good. And then this last method type is rejected. Return this ID equals self rejected ID. Okay. And now this test should pass. Okay, we're good. So now I have the ability to save all major events except expired, which I don't want to handle. So upon thinking about it a little bit more, I don't like having all these methods for every type of event type there is. What I really want to do is say something like self assert true last event for ride is, and I pass it event type to assert. That's really what I want to do. So, and the way it would work, it would be something like this. So, pass the ride event type, and I would return this type. I could call it many things, but let's just say equals this guy. Oop. So, write event type, return this ID equals event type to assert. Get ID. Yeah. So then I can get rid of all these methods. And write event, I can get rid of all these methods. Goodbye. All right. So is write event type requested. Okay. Should be it. And I can get rid of this. Get rid of this. Yeah, I wish I'd done this sooner, but that's the whole point of refactoring is sometimes you don't see things right away. Until they kind of hit you in the face. All right. Is write event type requested. Okay, it should be good. Let's make sure the test still pass. All right, we're good. Yeah, it's so much cleaner.